Picture your brain as like a computer processor. Most days, it runs all your standard apps pretty smoothly. But then, sometimes, usually when you're lying awake in bed at like 2 in the morning, that processor just maxes out at 100% capacity.
Oh, yeah. It's just running that massive energy-draining background program of pure overthinking.
Right. It's like a washing machine that just never stops spinning. You're obsessing over whether you used the wrong verb tense in a meeting that afternoon, or, I don't know, replaying a minor conversation from 3 years ago because you're suddenly terrified you sounded foolish.
It feels exactly like a dog chasing its own tail. You were just thinking in these highly stressful circles, but getting absolutely nowhere. It leaves you exhausted, and you haven't actually solved anything.
Exactly. And that is why we're doing today's deep dive. Welcome in, everyone. I'm your host.
And I'm thrilled to be here to help break this all down with you.
Today, we are exploring a really fascinating collection of transcripts. We're specifically focusing on an episode of the Learn English Camp podcast, the one featuring Arya and Ben. And the mission here is to extract their blueprint for building confidence in a second language.
Yeah, specifically English. But honestly, as you dig into their methodology, you realize they aren't just teaching linguistics.
Not at all.
No, they're offering this absolute masterclass in behavioral psychology. It applies to almost any daunting new skill.
Right. So for you listening, whether you're trying to learn a language or, starting a new job or even just trying to speak up more in meetings, this deep dive is going to break down 5 practical steps to basically stop freezing and start communicating.
Because the underlying cognitive barriers, they're identical across all those scenarios.
They really are. But before we get to the tactics, the text insists we have to dismantle our fundamental definition of confidence because most of us just have it backwards.
Completely backwards. We tend to treat confidence like a prerequisite, like something you just magically have or you don't.
Yeah, we assume the confident person is simply the one who never makes a mistake.
Right, which is a complete inversion of reality. The sources highlight that confidence is not the absence of mistakes. It is the ability to make a mistake and just keep going.
Yes, whereas a person without confidence hits a roadblock and they just stop.
Exactly. They mispronounce a word, their internal alarm system goes off, and they go totally silent. A confident person makes the exact same error, but their brain doesn't see it as a threat. They just keep talking.
And the analogy they use here in the source is just foundational. It's a baby learning to walk. If you watch a baby try to take its first steps, the failure rate is staggering.
Oh, it's terrible. They fall over constantly.
Right. But there is a complete absence of an inner critic. The baby doesn't sit on the floor, evaluate its mechanics, and decide, well, I guess I'm just not talented at walking. I'll stay down here.
Because the baby hasn't yet developed the capacity for social comparison. And that right there is the primary engine of adult anxiety.
Oh, the comparison trap. It's brutal.
It really is. As adults, we are crippled by the fear of looking incompetent relative to other people. The sources specifically point to modern social media for this.
Yeah, you open an app or you sit in a global conference room and you observe someone speaking a second language with just effortless fluency.
And your immediate instinct is to compare your messy starting line to their 10,000 hours of practice. We feel terrible about ourselves because we're completely blind to all the invisible friction that built their fluency.
We don't see the years of stuttering, the blank stares or the embarrassing miscommunications. We only see the optimized result.
It's basically like watching an Olympic sprinter and concluding you're a total failure because your morning jog looks sluggish.
That is such a good way to put it. Okay, let's unpack this. That sets up the very first tactic from the Learn English Camp sources, which is to start small and celebrate every win.
Yeah, the central thesis here is that action precedes confidence, which really challenges how most of us approach self-improvement.
Right, because we usually sit around waiting to feel confident before we do the thing.
Which is a trap. Waiting for the feeling just doesn't work. The neurology dictates the exact opposite sequence. You have to force the action first, often while your nervous system is literally screaming at you.
And the confidence is generated as a byproduct of surviving that action. The source actually uses this amazing metaphor. They say, you cannot wait for a fire to be warm before you strike the match.
Oh, I love that part.
Yeah.
You strike the match first, you get that friction, and the warmth, the confidence is the delayed result.
So confidence is essentially a receipt. You get it after you've already purchased the experience.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. And the whole start small thing is a deliberate strategy to bypass your amygdala, which controls your fight or flight response.
Because if your goal is to deliver a flawless 30-minute presentation, your brain just panics.
Exactly. The cortisol spikes and you freeze. But if your goal is just to, say good morning to the barista in English, the threat is localized. It's totally survivable.
And the sources emphasize that when you pull off that tiny interaction, you have to intentionally celebrate it. Which, I mean, on the surface feels a bit ridiculous. Like, woohoo, I ordered a coffee without panicking.
It does feel silly, but there is an actual neurochemical purpose to it.
Yeah.
You are intentionally programming your nervous system.
By triggering a dopamine release.
Yes. When you pause to acknowledge that small victory, you release a little dopamine, which tells your brain, hey, this unfamiliar environment is safe. The brain learns through positive reinforcement.
So the more tiny signals of safety you accumulate, the less your processor maxes out next time.
Precisely.
But, even if you want to take that small action, there's this massive physical roadblock. Your brain is exhausted before you even open your mouth.
Oh, cognitive overload.
Yeah. Which brings us to the second tactic. Stop translating in your head.
This is huge for anyone learning English. Or really anyone adapting to heavy corporate jargon.
Right. The instinct is to think in your native language, formulate this brilliant sentence, and then manually translate it word for word.
And that process creates a severe cognitive bottleneck. Working memory has a very limited capacity.
So if you're holding a native concept, fetching vocabulary, applying grammar rules, and monitoring the other person's face all at once, you just crash.
Exactly. By the time you've computed the perfect sentence, the conversation has moved on. Or you just go completely blank mid-sentence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The countermeasure they suggest is self-narration.
Yes, narrating your daily life directly in the target language inside your head.
Like you wake up and think to yourself in English, I'm waking up, I need coffee, I am cutting the onion, this is not fun.
What's fascinating here is the psychology of it. You are bypassing the translation layer entirely. You're forcing your brain to associate the physical action directly with the English vocabulary.
I have to admit, though, walking around my kitchen silently narrating my chores feels incredibly awkward. I feel like it would make me more self-conscious.
It feels weird at first, sure. But think about the psychological safety of it. When you narrate your morning routine privately, there are zero stakes.
Because there's no audience to judge you.
Right. It removes that washing machine anxiety because you're operating in a completely sterile environment. The threat response stays totally dormant.
So you're essentially preloading the words, warming them up. So when you're in a real conversation, they're ready on the surface.
Exactly. You're building muscle memory without the stress of a performance.
Okay, but even with those pathways warmed up, you are inevitably going to hit a wall in the real world.
Oh, for sure. It happens to everyone.
You'll be mid-sentence, the pressure is on, and a crucial word just vanishes from your brain. What then?
This leads to their third tip, which is my favorite. Use what you know, not what you wish you knew.
The concept of circumlocution.
Yes, going around a missing word instead of freezing up.
The example in the text is so funny. If you forget the word refrigerator, you just call it the cold box in the kitchen.
It gets the job done.
It does, but I have to push back slightly here. If you're in a professional environment, doesn't calling a fridge a cold box make you sound a bit silly? Like, doesn't that confirm the exact fear of sounding unintelligent?
It might feel that way internally, but the sources point out something crucial. Native speakers do this all the time.
Really? Just completely blank out.
Think about it. How often do you forget a word in your native language and say, hey, can you hand me that metal thing that opens the bottle?
Oh, right, because I can't remember the phrase bottle opener for a split second.
Exactly. But you don't panic. You just describe it. Keeping the conversation moving shows way more confidence than just going dead silent.
That's a really fair point. There is actually this great story in the transcripts about a high-stakes international work meeting. The speaker completely forgets the word deadline.
Which is terrifying in a corporate setting.
Yeah.
That's usually the exact trigger for your brain to hit 100% capacity and shut down.
But instead of freezing, they just sidestepped it. They said, the last day we need to finish the project.
And let me guess, the meeting just moved on.
Yep. A colleague just nodded and said, right, the deadline, and everything advanced without a hitch.
That is the magic of circumlocution. When you hit a mental block and go silent, your brain perceives failure. The cortisol floods in, and your memory gets wiped.
But by instantly pivoting to a description, you keep the cortisol low. You prove that the communication is more important than the perfect word.
Right. But to take that kind of risk, to willingly call a fridge a cold box, you really need to make sure you aren't practicing in a hostile environment.
Which brings us to the fourth principle. Find a safe place to practice.
Because confidence is like a plant, right? It won't grow if the environment is too cold or hostile.
If every time you speak, people are correcting your pronunciation or sighing impatiently, your brain categorizes speaking as a high-risk activity.
It learns that opening your mouth leads to social punishment. And once that happens, your subconscious will do everything it can to stop you from speaking.
So you need good soil. The sources suggest a language exchange partner, someone who is also struggling to learn your native language.
That mutual empathy is so powerful.
Yeah.
Or finding a supportive online community. They even advocate for practicing out loud in front of a mirror.
Yeah, talking to your own reflection, which again sounds even more awkward than the internal narration.
It does.
And I mean, how does that even help if there's no one there to correct your grammar? Aren't you just cementing your mistakes?
Well, you aren't using the mirror for perfect grammar. You're using it to condition your nervous system. Speaking a new language requires moving your mouth in unfamiliar ways, and doing that out loud is vulnerable.
Right.
So the mirror gives you a space where you can practice the physical act of speaking with zero threat of social rejection, because your reflection never laughs at your grammar.
It's exposure therapy. You're desensitizing yourself to the discomfort. And that psychological safety paves the way for the fifth and final tactic, which is to focus on communication, not perfection.
This is where we really confront the cost of perfectionism. The goal of language is human connection. It's not about passing some covert grammar exam.
The text has this vivid scenario. Imagine a lost tourist comes up to you, and they have heavily broken, messy English. They say, "Hello, you need help? Yes, I show you the way. Come."
Technically, the syntax is a disaster.
A total disaster. But as the lost tourist, you don't judge their unconjugated verbs. You just feel overwhelming relief. The connection happened.
Exactly. If that person had been paralyzed by perfectionism, if they stopped to mentally review their subject-verb agreement, they probably would have just stayed silent.
The connection would have been totally lost just to protect their ego.
The sources compare this to swimming. If you get in the water and you are stiff and tense, obsessing over every muscle movement, you sink.
But if you relax and just let the words come, you float. So what does this all mean? What is the ultimate mindset shift here?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals this incredible paradox. Letting go of the need for perfect grammar actually improves your grammar faster.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive. If I ignore the rules, won't I just get stuck with terrible habits?
You'd think so, but no. When you just focus on communicating, you get vastly more exposure. You have more conversations, you get more feedback, and your brain quietly absorbs the rules without you having to force it.
It's implicit learning. You are feeding your brain's pattern recognition machine with massive amounts of data.
Yes. But if perfectionism stops you from speaking, you literally starve your brain of the data it needs to recognize those patterns in the first place.
We treat flawless fluency as the prerequisite for practice, when really fluency is the product of high-volume, messy practice.
Exactly. So to summarize the core truth we've extracted today, confidence is not the absence of fear.
It really isn't. Confidence is doing the thing even when you are afraid. The sources make it clear that nervousness never disappears entirely, even for fluent speakers.
It's just that your relationship to that nervousness changes. You accept that progress is always more important than perfection.
You proceed in spite of the alarm bells, and honestly, it leaves me pondering this secondary thought, something not explicitly in the text, but it feels like the natural conclusion.
Oh, what's your theory?
Well, if learning a new language forces us to let go of perfection and embrace making mistakes like a baby learning to walk, does stepping into a second language actually give you a second personality?
Oh, wow. That is a profound question.
Think about it. By practicing this kind of radical vulnerability in a new language, by surviving the awkwardness of calling a fridge a cold box could, that actually make you a braver, more confident person in your native language too.
I mean, you are actively rewiring your tolerance for social risk. That kind of structural change rarely stays confined to just one area of your life.
It changes the operator, not just the output. So the next time you're lying awake and that mental processor starts spinning out of control over a misplaced word, just remember, the feedback loop only breaks when you decide human connection is more valuable than looking flawless.
You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep communicating.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take this blueprint, step into the friction, and go out and celebrate a small win today. We'll see you next time.